Welcome to Audaciously Speaking. I'm so excited to have my first guest. Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. Duh. I'm Carmen Angela Harris. I run a little communications consultancy and I just talk on the internet. That's basically me. And I'm a mom of one. That's pretty much it. Oh, and obviously everyone knows I'm a big Eagles fan. So anything else you can find on the internet about me. I would like to introduce you to my guest, Rose Ross. She's head of O marketing, and we have a very, very interesting story that I'll let her tell you about. But funny thing is, I feel like I've had dinner with Rose like many, many times, and we've actually never met in person. We worked together more than twice, more than 3 times. We've worked together. We've never met in person. So we have a very familiarity with each other that is only through the internet. So thank you for the internet connections. Rose, good morning. Well, it's morning for me. What time is it? Tell us where you are. Tell us about yourself.
We are at tea time in the UK at the moment, just coming up to 4 p.m.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm going to hold off the cake because I'm too excited. So thank you, Carmen. Yeah, I'm delighted to be the test pancake for the audacious recordings.
Yes. I'm so excited to have you. So tell me a little bit about O Marketing and what you guys do and the kind of companies you work with.
Yeah, cool. So we are specialized in enterprise tech from a PR primarily perspective, and we work with a lot of startups in cyber, but we also work with some of the organizations, particularly in the UK, such as the Cybersecurity Business Resilience, which is a policy focused cyber unit, and we've worked with the UK Cybersecurity Council and the Defence and Security Media Advisory Board, and we also do some work with IC2. So yeah, we do a lot with cyber, but we have covered other, obviously AI is integral in everything now, so.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you have a lot of roots working with both vendor clients, but on the policy side, a little bit of the education side. So you have a deep knowledge of cyber from different hats. So that's really interesting. So today we're going to talk about something that's top of mind for me as, communications leader, and I know for you and a lot of your clients as well, events and awards.
Oh, yes.
A lot of commentary on LinkedIn and the interwebs about awards don't mean much. And everybody's got a perspective on how you should show up at events. I like to view myself as a communicator. I try to run away from the title as a marketer, at least in the last year I have, but that's another rant for another show. So I would love to talk to you about 2 big events in particular that the cyber community is, that we all come around, as a globe. One is Security Europe, which is in June every year. So obviously we're in September and would like to go back and do some reflections on that. And then Black Hat Europe, Black Hat America just wrapped up about a month ago. Yep. It's always in Vegas in August. And then Black Hat Europe's coming up in a few weeks. A couple of people I talked to would love to know the differences and how those 2 shows are run behind the scenes, how you should show up from a marketing and or communications hat. So let's kind of start with O Marketing, your relationship with or how you help clients or your involvement with Security Europe. And let's kind of just start with there, and anything that you want to share there. I'd love to.
Well, like everybody, if we've got a client who is going to the show, then we will look at, how they would need support. Do they have news there? Who are the spokespeople who are going to be there? What's going on the stand? What's going on outside? And that kind of segues a little bit interestingly into what the differences are, because I would imagine the majority of your audience will be from the States, and I don't know how many of them will have come across for either of these 2 events, but we'll be probably
there is a lot of crossover. There is a lot of crossover. I mean, for me, I always send you to Info Security Europe for me. So, but there are a lot of communicators who do both. I remember one year, I feel like 2 or 3 years ago, I feel feel like, or maybe it was longer than that. Time is fine. I feel like RSA and Info Security Europe. I feel like RSA was 1 week, and the next week or 2 weeks later was Info Security Europe, and it was hair on fire. And then I think Gartner Security and Risk was right around. This was like 3 or 4 years ago. It was like when
I've
people
got
were
a
trying to figure out the post-pandemic calendar
I've
thing.
got a horrible feeling that might have been the first time we worked together.
I think it
Um,
was. I think it was. Yeah.
because that was
Yeah.
part of the reason why you couldn't come over because they were kind of
Yeah.
back to back. And obviously they've moved apart now that,
Mhm.
it always used to be April. And I think RSA used to be a little bit earlier and it's got a bit later.
Was.
And, they've kind of moved around a little bit. So info security is, I would say, closest to RSA, unsurprisingly, because the Black Hat Europe is obviously going to follow a lot more of the format from the big one in Vegas, the big Black Hat. It has a very well established press team who do a great job. There's a press office and the
How
location of.
many reporters attend, do you think?
Well, I
Infosec-
think it's difficult to tell because, I would say probably there's about, say, at its busiest in the press center, it can probably handle about 30 or 40 media plus, other
Okay.
people. However, that would start to get a bit uncomfortable. There's like a section for them to actually like a quiet area, but obviously it's not quiet. But a dedicated sort of workspace where people can actually file stories and do emails and stuff like that. And then there's probably about 10, 15 places to do briefings. But the nice thing is it actually has a balcony out over the Thames. So if you want to get a little bit of fresh air, then that's an option. So I think it's quite well established from that perspective. But what I would say is I don't feel that a lot of the exhibitors make the most of the press opportunities there. I mean, we had a really busy time. We had 3 clients there. We did 30 briefings over not even a full 2 days because one of the clients was only there for an afternoon. So,
Mm.
and the other one was there for a day. So, it was a busy, busy, busy time. But I felt that, we were probably one of the teams that was making the most of it. And bearing in mind, you've got over 200 exhibitors. There must have been more going on than that, right?
Right. So let's start there. That's good. That's good. So when you're advising a client in the weeks leading up to the show, what do you look for to kind of help them make the most of the briefings or the brief time that they're available at the show? And then what are you seeing that people can do better to make the most of the press opportunities at the show?
Yeah, well, I mean,
I
obviously, if
think
you've
it's
got
different if
something.
you're an exhibitor versus not exhibiting.
Well, obviously, if you're not exhibiting, then you've got to play it a little bit more. You're not going to have access to the same locations, are you? So you're going
Right.
to have to work on public space. But public space it's noisy. We've all been to enough exhibitions to know, you
Mhm.
can't have a little cozy chat in a corner somewhere very easily. Well, you probably could do if you're happy to sit on the ground, which I don't think most people would be up for. This isn't
Yeah,
Woodstock.
I've
Um,
done it.
so from that perspective, I suppose the other thing is, we've talked about this in the past, is that you've got to put the 50% of what you do is about relationships. Now, that's obviously relationships that we have with journalists and our clients, but also nurturing those relationships with clients and the journalist community and the analyst community and building that bridge. But it can't, just be that.
Yeah.
We don't want to be gatekeepers. We want to be connecting. So from that perspective, if you're exhibiting, have something to say. Have a topic you want to talk about. Right? I know it sounds basic. Carmen's laughing. But are there things happening around that time that are going to be interesting? So around Black Hat later on, we've got the UK Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill, which is a huge bit
Right.
of legislation, which will be dropping, we believe, very soon after conference season, which should be, we hope, sort of in October, which is obviously Cybersecurity Awareness Month, which is another sort of bugbear to try and how do you make the most of that as a communicator with something that's relevant that the journalists will actually find useful. So, that could be a topic. If that's dropped and there's a lot in your area of cyber that either is there, hooray, or missing, boo, and you've got to come up with a reason why you think that this is not a good thing. But from an info security perspective, so have something to say, have people who can talk and build relationships and be knowledgeable. I think it is hard, particularly for people who aren't big and who maybe don't have lots of execs available, and maybe not located in the region. But it is great to have them there. I think that gives some credibility to your presence in Europe. If you've got people who are senior and can talk, because obviously if you've just got a sales rep and a tech person, you still might have very interesting technology, you might have a really amazing solution, but the media are really not going to speak to those guys. They want to talk to, C-suite, at least very senior within the organization. So you need to have a topic. Ideally, you need to have news and have a spokesperson. Now, I mean, if you can rock up with a load of research, a customer, oh my gosh, that would be amazing. So
Yeah.
that's the standard ingredients for making that type of news cake.
Yeah, that's the same advice I give people as well. So it's good that, folks who are crossing over the waters can also have that in their back pocket. Is there anything that you've seen specifically at Info Security Europe? Because I know that you have deep relationships, and people, everybody knows you there. Are there things that happened this year that you saw that brands could have done better? Like, is there anything that, is there a piece of research that didn't go as far maybe that it could have gone? Is there news that would have been newsworthy maybe 5 or 6 years ago that you have to come up with to talk about in a different way or demonstrate in a different way? What's changed, and what do you think that people can do better, in this era of cyber events?
Well, I think one of the things is engagement with, the footfall. It's busy, nobody knows that more than people who exhibit and put an awful lot of investment into RSA. So you do need to really ramp up to it. So you need to take the sort of the same approach as it's as important for Europe as it is, the RSA is for the US. So you need to take kind of quite a long view of it. And I think one of the problems you have from a timing perspective, RSA is draining. People are burned out after that. I mean, I think people are burned out before they even got there, to be honest, if I know what it's like being in a marketing team with pressure.
Yeah.
So, you've got to almost have started planning info security before you've got to RSA, or at least be thinking about it, because otherwise what you do is you get over and then everybody starts to breathe and relax, and then you blink a couple of times and then info security is there, right? And you've not had the time to really think about it. So if you've got a team in Europe, make sure that the PR is part of that planning process, because they're probably more involved with the actual stand side of it and not thinking necessarily so much about the PR side of it, if
You
that's
mentioned
from the US.
Yeah, no, that's true. I'm always thinking about the PR side, but I totally get what you're saying. A lot of people, especially at younger brands or startup brands that might not be, I basically tell everybody to list, unless you're Google Wiz or CrowdStrike or Microsoft, you got to play, it's a different playbook. And it's even more of a different playbook depending on the size of your company and or the area of cyber that you work. Identity is super crowded. Agentic security is it's starting to be more crowded. I think the hype train is really high on those. So yeah, I totally get what you're saying. You mentioned earlier about having people who could speak. And sometimes it's usually they might send the top sales guy or whoever. A lot of people focus on events for lead gen. That's not my area. I understand those areas, but I would love to focus on what advice you give clients or how people should think about approaching with Black Hat Europe coming up in a few weeks, measuring the success of their event beyond badge scans and lead generation.
So I think that brings us on to the difference between info security and Black Hat Europe. So Black Hat in Europe is considerably smaller. than the US one in Vegas. And obviously, you have to remember that a lot of people who are attending are technical, and also they will go home afterwards because a lot of them will live around London. Unlike
Oh,
Vegas, where you're bringing people into one
I see.
location, so you've got them. They're not going home to see, to read bedtime stories or to go and play racquetball or, have a normal life. This, they come, everybody gets fully immersed in it, very much as they do at RSA. Info security also suffers with that because you've got a lot of people going in for an afternoon and then coming back out again, and they're not like, I wouldn't say caged in, that's not the right sort of expression, but that they are focused primarily on being in Vegas or being in San Francisco,
Mhm.
whereas, a lot of people might come for the day, but you can come for the day and get home within the UK reasonably easily through, whether you're flying or getting on a train or even just getting on the tube. So if you want people to stay after hours, you have to have a very compelling reason for them to be there, you know.
Mm,
And there
mhm.
will be competition, there'll be competition nearby. All of our events have now moved to Excel, which is obviously a huge dedicated space for exhibitions. But the amount of opportunities around the edges to do sort of events, and then obviously once people have got on the tube to go away, you've potentially lost them. So
Mm,
you've got to have some engagement on the show floor and bring people to the show floor. I think it's a difficult one, isn't it? I think that we all expect us to be focused on the people who are going to be there anyway. But I think as marketeers now, and as PR people too, we need to think about, we need to be part of the draw to the
okay.
event. Yeah. So very much social media, very much outreach, and a reason for people to be coming, because the people that you may be after, not all of them will necessarily be attending.
Well, the folks that come, that just live in the area that might come for the day, would they come for a breakfast? Would they come for or stay for, like a 5 o'clock, panel, networking thing? Would people come for the day that did they anchor on, morning or evening, or did they kind of just treat it like a work day and go home? What's the
Well,
general?
I think a lot of them do just treat it like that, but they will make plans in the evening. I think a lot of them, if there are people that they want to meet or a type of event that they want to go to. I mean, I haven't got statistics from InfoSec, but I've got statistics that our friends at the Insider Schedule shared
Oh,
about
okay.
RSA and Black Hat, just to get a feel for what you're contending with. 2025 Black Hat, there were 165 fringe events.
Ooh, that's a lot.
Yeah, and at RSA there were 267.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah, and what's coming out from that is dinners at RSA, not as much at Black Hat. You are competing with the VCs and high-profile banks.
Yeah.
So breakfast slots and lunch slots are underutilized, particularly if they're content-led.
Mm.
And yeah, content-led stuff, except on the Monday when there's a full program, is another opportunity. But it does talk about B-sides as well. And obviously B-sides from a
What did
PR
they say about
perspective,
B-sides?
that stands out as being a very community-driven opportunity for people to get involved with.
Yeah, I think being RSA is usually the one week of the year where I'm gone the longest.
Mm.
And my support team who helps me out with my son when I leave town, I'm like, this is the one that I always do, and they are like, oh yeah, yeah, we know you're gonna be gone longer. I think I might need to even be gone longer because I think next year I will do B-sides. I think about 80% of the folks I network with or support go to B-sides. They're there Saturday. They're there. They get in Friday and they're there at B-sides on Saturday before RSA. It's starting to bubble up more and more. I think more this year than in other years. I've heard more people talking about the benefits of B-sides. But then by the time it's Wednesday of the RSA conference, everybody's done. I'd be cooked. But I think I might.
Well, yeah, everybody needs to get an RSA training, don't they? Get yourself like a
Yeah,
regime, like training for a marathon,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that's
It's
some of the
really
stuff
interesting
there.
data. What else did you learn about? Did you hear any other interesting stats?
There's tons. They've done a huge report. They did one earlier in the year, and they'll be putting out some more stats as well. So I'm very happy to share that way of getting hold of that stuff for
Right.
everybody. So, but for Black Hat specifically in Europe, it does not have a very mature PR program. I think it's run from the States. So there was a press office. One of the highlights, I guess, I think for marketeers and also for PR people, and we did discuss this when we were chatting, sort of very, very, very high level, is obviously this is run by the Informa team. So you have got all of Omdia's cybersecurity people there. So if you're not briefing them and taking that opportunity. And if you think about it timing wise, between RSA and December, so it's early December, unfortunately, clashing with the cybersecurity marketing con. But
Yeah.
yeah, little bugbear there. But if you think about it, then that's actually quite a nice sort of cadence for a bit of catch-up time if you do have execs there who want to speak to, Holly, Rick, Max, blah, 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 everybody else. And they always do a nice, well, they did last year anyway, they do a nice sort of analyst summit where they actually present a lot of their information, a lot of their data. So it's a great sort of relaxed, formal way to get in front of people. So if time allows, it's great if, a spokesperson or a marketeer can at least pop in for some of that.
I live for that. I live
Yeah.
for that Maxine Holt LinkedIn post and the email from Ambi about that. And that is one of the number one things. And lately lately the folks I've supported over the years have not been able to put that on their calendar. I think it's a must attend part of the Black Hat agenda. And I live for that. It just makes you so much smarter. One of the analysts, I won't name him, but he's no longer with Ambia, but he turned me on to this years ago. One of my kind of go-to guys, and I'm like, hey, I'm talking to this company. What do you think? And they give me a little background. And he turned me on to this analyst presentation that Ambia does. They do the Black Hat here as well every year. And I'm like, gotta put it on the calendar. You gotta go. It's just the top insights. Everybody's there. Yeah, so it's
It's
really
a great way to
I think
absorb
I
it
had
all.
one of my SMEs go when I was at Sumo. We went to it and he found it truly valuable. I totally, yeah, that's one of the best reasons one of the best things to put on your calendar for that analyst thing.
So that's where I was sort of coming to. So that makes it, interesting for someone from the team to be there, although I've been lucky enough to squeeze in there. But I think the other thing is obviously we as a team, because we did it for info security, we also offered people an opportunity if they didn't have ongoing PR or for whatever reason, they just wanted to maximize what they were doing at info security. And we'll do the same for Black Hat, because there are some companies that are just not in a position to quite transition
Yeah,
into something on an ongoing basis, and we do understand that. But our view is, right, okay, well, we'd obviously love for Black Hat's PR team to be really proactive, but I don't think they will be, unfortunately. So that then becomes our job, right? We
yeah,
have to take them, we have to get the people to the mountain.
yep.
Waiting for a press list from somebody else isn't it
Black
necessarily?
Hat is unlike ours. I mean, they did a little bit better job this year of
Yeah.
sharing some of that information, but in years past, no, you have to just be on your job as a communicator and understanding who's going and knowing what they want to talk about because Black Hat is traditionally a little slow to sharing that information, whereas RSA will be sharing it for 3 months in advance.
They're
Um,
still sharing, they're still sharing. But I mean, the thing is, the great thing is if you've got your execs there, so you've put that investment in there, maybe they're doing some kind of speaker slot as well. Maybe you've got stuff planned in the evenings. Maybe you've got stuff planned as a breakfast briefing. We might have one of our clients doing breakfast briefing at the Magic Circle, which would be really exciting. But it's coordinate that as well very closely because I think one of the things is, and I think this is one of the reasons why our partnerships always work really well, is you really let us know what's going on. Even if you're not sure it's 100% relevant for the region, If it is, then we can like leap on it.
I've been very fortunate to work at some brands that do respect PR, especially if you're able to bring some cool ideas to the table and they're willing to leap through mountains to make sure that you have what you need. So there's been a blessing. I feel like I say this almost every place, but truly it's been a blessing to work with some of these smart folks who just say, hey, just give me what you need. And they'll
Yeah.
give it to you, and we're able to regionalize content, maybe even stuff that we've released globally that we can get deeper in for specific regions or specific verticals, and they're always willing to support. So I think that's really good advice. It sounds obvious and it's very elementary, but a lot of people do forget that the messenger, the message, the timing, all of those things are really critical to having a really strong communications residence at shows. And so, half the battle is letting your PR folks do what PR people do. So,
Yeah, so I think sometimes some of the
yeah.
great cool things that are working, which perhaps don't seem like an obvious thing, whether it's webinars, whether it's a
Mhm.
really cool blog post, we got coverage for one of our clients in cyber because were doing a lot of research and a lot of it was never going to be a press release, but it was still really interesting.
Right,
So not
right.
always, because obviously today blog posts are more about SEO,
Yeah,
perhaps in some areas, the dynamic will change. There is, you've got to
yeah.
keep content fresh, but it may not be, media facing stuff, right? People aren't
Right,
necessarily excited
but
about that.
right. But that's again, let PR people do what we do. Our bag of tricks is deeper than putting something on the wire.
Mm.
Um, and and I think people know that, but I think that they forget that we sometimes know that it may not rise to the level of press release, but we've got, at least me, I always tell people I can go from A to M on one arm and we can go through a list of things that we can do. And then, someone asked me recently, it's like, well, what if this doesn't happen? You have a plan B? I just bust out laughing. I'm like, sir, I'm at plan D and I don't even really know what you all got. And they're like, okay, there's so many things that comms folks can do, even, with something that may not be like you say or understand to be, in a press release. So I think the insights that you shared about underutilization of breakfast for content led stuff is interesting. Hopefully, you can give us a little bit more at the end about where people can get access to that information as well so that they can plan. But timing is always a thing when it comes to cybersecurity, especially because the environment, people are trying to sell what's on the truck,
Yeah.
which is one thing. I'm trying to sell you an EDR. I'm trying to send you
Mm.
an identity, blah, blah, blah. Um, but at the other side, the policy noise is very loud all over the globe
Mm.
when it comes to cyber, as you well know, but also the breach of the day. It seems to be like 4 or 5 of them anywhere all the time. And
Yeah.
there's probably 4 or 5 of them, excuse me, that make headlines, notwithstanding the ones that we don't hear about or that we find out about 2 weeks later or a month later or a
Yeah.
quarter later. How would
Yeah.
you help clients or the folks you advise prepare to cut through the noise when they're in a show environment? I feel like things always happen like when there's a show, like a big show.
Well, there will be a black hat, I
Yeah.
think, because there's that little golden moment when the lovely people who decide to hack systems go, oh my gosh, we're coming towards Christmas. Yeah, God forbid anybody has a break. So they're all knackered, looking forward to, a bit of eggnog, chilling by the fire. No, I think not. So from that perspective, but that noise is like a constant.
Yeah.
So what I would say is that is an opportunity for reactive PR, right? And in some cases, actual sort of proactive pitching. But I think there has to be a balance because I don't think every time there's a breach that you can potentially put out a statement to every single journalist about that because one, they know that it's going out to every single other journalist as well. It needs to be a bit more specific to your world, or you need to bring something a little bit special to it. So there's a challenge around that. And what I would say is on the point of end users, we know how difficult in cyber it is to get a customer to talk, right? How difficult it is for them even to do a case study. But I would say if you really, really, really want to make the most of that opportunity, and it's not going to be for everyone because not everybody wants to talk to the media, not everybody can talk to the media, but as soon as that little light shines above the head or the little twinkle in their eye go, oh yeah, I'll do a case study, or whether it's written into your contracts, which is obviously even better, that you start to think aligning that with your PR. Because I think not everybody, a lot of people get obsessed with, we've got to get the case study, we've got to get it on the website, we've got to be using it for our content, blah, 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 our campaigns. But no, that is absolutely correct. But, and I know we've probably talked about this before, if you say to me, not you, Carmen, but if somebody says to me, we have just published a case study on our case study on our website, in my head, I have just run against that brick wall.
Yeah, me too. I don't
Like,
know.
whoa.
In my head, I pivot to the next thing on my list because there's nothing I can do at this point.
Although I have to say, I have managed to secure, and this is my little claim to fame, one of our clients who was actually an older client, so we kind of came on board after they'd already came through, is going to be fireside chatting on a webinar. So it's not
Great,
possible.
that's great.
It's not impossible,
No,
but
it's not, but it's
difficult, right?
yeah, yeah. And sometimes for me, if I've already got, a list of things that's already going on, I'm like, yeah, I'm not even gonna deal with that. Like, catch me next time. Let's collaborate early on because sometimes it's just a lot of additional work to pull things through that, just go ahead and use that and I'll get the next one kind of thing if I can. But I'm actually
I think
taking
the problem is on the quantity that people are able to get. Because
that's
when
the
you're
thing.
only getting
Yeah.
one out maybe once every 2 months, then you're really
Once
stuck.
every 2 months would be heaven. Once every 2 months is actually a lot.
Yeah. Well, however the cadence,
Yeah,
not to make the most of
yeah,
it is a real
yeah.
shame. And it's not true of everybody. We've got, our clients brilliant, but in the past there have been times when you think, why? Why do we only hear about this now?
Mm-hmm.
It's just something to bear in mind, right? Case study process, right? Engage. We've got the yes. Let's give the PR team the heads up,
Heads up. Yeah,
even just to say, this is what we're doing. Have you got anything that is
yeah.
relevant? I mean, in the past, we've actually written the case study, so we obviously knew then, but it's not always the case. There's lots of amazing internal resources or even dedicated people who are doing that all the time. So that's absolutely fine. So sorry, that's kind of my sort of
No,
lost opportunities.
well, I mean, sometimes you just can put that there's plenty that can be done, and I think it's just the collaboration. Just like with anything in life, people go off of their own experience, and if they've never experienced working with a communications partners who's been able to do something, they're just not even going to consider it. And that's just humans going to humans. So then we can get the next one in 4 months or 6 months, but we'll get to the next one.
In 2 years'
Once
time.
every 2 months, I'm like, where they do that?
Well,
What universe is that? Whoa, that's a universe,
it's in a very happy universe when it comes to
right?
case
I'm like,
studies.
I've never lived in that universe. Where? Oh, that's a thing. That's a great thing if you got it though. So there's, like you said, this is the pancake episode. So I want to try out this segment, my version of a lightning round. I'll take all feedback if it sucks or not. That I'm calling rule check. My whole thing is about being audacious and just turning things on its head. Just to kind of help vendors and brands advance, especially in cyber where the noise is like constant. So for my rule check, I'm going to call this the play breaker lightning round. And so quick questions, quick answers. So let's see what you got, Rose. Okay. Rule check. Better swag equals better results. Follow the rule or break the rule. What do you think?
Follow the rule if you back it up with a really strong social media run up.
I like.
Otherwise, you're just making sure that students don't get cold in the winter.
Oh my God, that's funny. Okay, yes.
Which is a good thing. We don't want them freezing.
We don't. Okay, rule check. You need C-suite speakers to get attention. True or false?
Yes and no. Yes, depending on the type of news you have.
Mhm.
No, if it's more about topics and themes when you can use other spokespeople such as customers.
Rule check. Communications ROI can be measured in the first 30 days. Realistic or myth? I didn't even.
Sorry, but I didn't realize this was a sketch show. Can, if you have, the domino factor from Deadpool is what I would say. If everybody's familiar with Deadpool and Domino, who, is quite lucky. So I would say there is a small chance that you can. Obviously, working with amazing communicators and having a really, really, really strong story, you might be able to get that dropped in towards the latter part of it. But I would say, like any good presidential innings, you'd need to have a good, strong 90-day plan, and then you build.
Right.
You're building the foundations. Unless you've already got a program running and you're just running with it.
Right. Rule check. Events are about lead generation first. What should they be about?
They are absolutely about securing sales, because I don't care how many leads you generate. If you don't convert them, they're a pile of poop. So because you don't know that, and you won't know that for maybe 18 months,
Yeah.
essentially, I think you need to also then back that up with looking at absolutely everything else that you can extract from that huge investment.
Yeah.
It's about building relationships with your customers, with your prospects, with your partners, with the media, with the analyst community, with, potential employees.
Good point. Good point. So thank you. Thank you for doing my rule check.
Well, I didn't even know what a rule check was. So luckily I came in with
I
a
don't need
quick
either. Again,
response.
pancake.
With your one and
Figure it
only one. But I got Deadpool into it, so I'm going
Yes,
to take that.
that was clever. Okay, let's pivot into Tech Trailblazers Awards. As you know, awards are always, it's like the Oxford comma conversation. People feel very strongly about this. Everyone who knows me, I am anti Oxford comma, and I will be forever. I'm anti. I think it's overused and completely unnecessary. Not completely, but like in 2% of the time you need it. And that's when you should bring it out. Otherwise, it can stay home. But that's just me. Awards. Let's talk about awards. I think people, marketers, I think in general feel some way. People who are core communications folks like me feel another way. And then you've got investors who might be in the ears of startup companies who feel one way about awards. How do you feel about awards, and what made you start the Tech Trailblazers Awards program?
Okay, so maybe if we start with the last part of the question. So the reason I started the Tech Trailblazers is we have worked a lot with startups in enterprise tech, like a lot. And we know, and I mean, I started my career in a startup in the UK, which was industrial networking. And then I went on to get this a fax server company. So yes, 50% won't know what a fax is, but that's fine. I don't care. So I know that they are starved of oxygen, I think is the best way of describing it. Getting into the media is very difficult if you don't have communicators, if you're trying to do it yourself, or even if you've, not got a lot of news, not got a lot of traction, not got a lot of visibility, not got a lot of backing, maybe you don't have huge success stories. And, there's only so many times you can knock on a door and say, I'd like to talk about this, right? If it's the same thing and the door hasn't opened up yet, right? Or it's been closed. So I felt that a lot of startups that we knew could benefit from something which would kind of level the playing field, because a lot of the awards at the time, that has changed over the last decade, but at the time were only focused really on the technology. right? It would be about security, and it would be about, one element of maybe identity, or, very, very
Okay.
at the time was probably VPNs or something. And there was no way anybody who was coming into that market was probably going to get the visibility, probably wouldn't be in a position to necessarily do particularly well. So it was quite often dominated by the titans within that space, and not really who, very powerful, very good technology most of the time, but maybe not very innovative. So around that time, we were doing some PR for an event in the UK called IP Expo, which is now called DTX. And we had suggested to them doing a little project around an awards that would kind of be a lead gen business development opportunity for them to engage with startups, right? Who obviously are hopefully going to grow, et cetera, et cetera. So we took the idea to them. They decided that they didn't have the budget available for it, and it kind of just got shelved. And then I spoke to Joe Baguley, who was at the time CTO EMEA for VMware. And I talked about my idea because I thought it had legs, but it didn't have legs just being run by a PR person. So I asked about whether he thought it was a good idea and whether he'd be a judge. And he said yes. And I went, okay, this game on. If he says yes without even blinking, I'm onto something here. There is an opportunity. So that's where it came from. So view on awards in general. Obviously, we track that marketplace quite closely, and it has ballooned as a marketplace for all sorts of technology. So I think it is quite a crowded space, a confusing space. There are some really good things. In fact, Carmen's so excited she's chucked her earring out of her ear. But we've got crazy things happening, like the RSA Innovation Sandbox. I mean, the 10 finalists getting $10 million.
Or
Hello,
something like that. Yeah.
a lot of money. Let's
A lot of
say.
money.
And I just would like to say that next year, despite rumours, we are not offering $10 million to the winner. So sorry. But it does go to show that there is some craziness, and why wouldn't you put your hat in the ring for that?
Right, right.
That's like potentially the startup lottery to be won quite quickly. But on the flip side, there are a lot which are, quite commercial, and it's about getting bums on seats at a dinner, or
Yeah.
charging people for the use of a logo, or God forbid, asking them to pay to enter, which we do. And there's a reason why we do that, but we can get onto that when I talk about the awards. But I think you have to weigh it up, and I think we were thinking ourselves as we look at the awards that we put or try, discuss with our clients is, some are very valuable and are worth it, and some are maybe not.
Yeah,
And you have to look at it.
I'm the same. Depending on the company and the stage and their goals, most importantly, their business goals. I have an award strategy. I have like a handful. I have a list, obviously, of hundreds, but I have an award strategy where I was at one company and I've never seen anything like this. And I swear to God, I never want to see it again. Where before I joined, the team had submitted like 10 submissions for one type of award because they had nothing else to do. And literally, it's because it wasn't working the way it was supposed to. And the awards, the amount that was spent on awards was nuts. And I said to my boss, I cut the awards budget. Why? No, I didn't. There's no way. Nobody. It's like CrowdStrike doesn't spend that much on awards. Like, come on. Like that, it was crazy. And I feel like there's certain awards that I think you need to submit to get to a certain goal, like the Forbes Cloud 100 or 60 or Cyber 60, whatever it's called. There's certain ones that you need to help build brand awareness at a certain stages of your growth as a startup. There's certain ones that you should always, I feel like the SCs you should always submit. There's the SCs in the UK, there's the SCs here. Certain ones have a heft, cybersecurity breakthrough. There's a heft to them that the logos you kind of want at certain stages in your development as a startup. But to submit to, because you have a person that's their job, is part of their job to do awards, is not just, I am not for that. Tech Trailblazers has a good reputation. When you guys are at the judging table, how do you look for what's real innovation versus marketing hype? I know that a lot of people just probably copy and paste from data sheets or whatever.
God forbid.
Do award applications. I don't, but how do you guys say, okay, this is real, this is interesting, and like,
Right. Well, I will tell you because I don't know. It's all behind closed doors. So I don't know what process they go through. They're the
oh,
expert.
this is this, okay, interesting.
So we've given them the rules, the guidelines around innovation, market readiness, there are four sort of pillars to that. And then it is down to them and they score it. And then we compile the data and then we push it out to the public vote and our new secret panel of judges who, don't get to see the nitty gritty, but they still get to see who's been shortlisted. So, and that's good visibility
Have there
for.
been any winners that have surprised you over the last couple of years?
Well, I try and make a point of not looking at entry forms until they're shortlisted. I think the feedback from judges is that they are sometimes a bit disappointed with what people put forward.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just maybe not. It's a bit like an exam, isn't it? I mean, if you haven't understood the question and just put down anything that you know,
There you go. Okay.
and with their, to ask questions. And I think a lot of us are guilty of this. Everybody's so busy, things end up being stacked up to the last minute, and everybody goes, oh my God, I've got to get this in. It's going to be due in blah, blah, blah. Oh, there's not going to be an extension because they've already extended it 4 weeks because of the secret judging panel. So this is our, if we want to be in it, we've got to go in now. So yeah, so they sometimes they don't really understand,
Mm,
come across. And I think this is a big topic as well. And you see it on stands and you see it on data sheets, you see it so
yeah.
all over the place is there's so much, buzzwords, this, that, and the other, that quite often, we've got like our secret bank of CISOs who kind of form an informal advisory board to marketing that I've been very lucky to get to know. And quite often I'll go, oh, pitching this company, what do you think of them? I go, can't work out what they're actually doing on the website. What do they do?
Right. Yeah. But I hear that a lot. I feel like I've heard that a lot in the last like 5 years that, like you said, folks on at the stand and in the booths at different shows that can't answer basic questions about why do I need this product? What does it do? How's it going to help my business? Like the lack of training there, I think is a big problem. I hear that everywhere. So I can imagine that it translates into these award submissions. Like you said, sometimes people are just rushing through from of course, marketers were always rushing from one thing to another. But
Yeah.
yeah, I see that. To hear that a judge will go to the website and say, the website doesn't sync up with what they put here, or there's like some disconnect. I've heard that before. I've heard that from industry analysts as well. Hey, sometimes the person putting the web content or writing the web content is not the person that is driving it, and there's usually a disconnect. I've seen that. I've been in those meetings, so I can totally see that. So when
Yeah.
it comes to awards, like, since you're an award person and you have an award that you're involved with, what can you tell people about awards? Like when they come to you and they're wanting to put together a strategy and they say, usually the question I hear is, what about awards? Like, and it's not really specific. It's just like, what about awards? What do you tell folks about how awards can help drive their business if they're done well?
Well, I mean, obviously, I focus on the startup community, and that's where I think awards are particularly important. I think, but I would also say things like analyst relations, and this is something else we talked about, and I still need to introduce you to the amazing Chris
Yeah.
Holcher,
Mhm.
because I know you've got a panel on
I
analyst
do.
relations coming up in
I
December
do.
when we're all busy over here in Europe, freezing, and you're all swanning around in Dallas talking about marketing, having a wonderful time. So, from awards perspective, I think, what we hear, and we, obviously ask our winners, what does it mean to you? And for some of them, it's been really, It's given an internal boost. It's given them something that they can use on their pitch decks. Because, we're talking about some who haven't even got Series A funding yet. And I think there is a big
Right.
problem with the VC world now. Maybe not the VC world, just I don't want to pick on them, but the whole funding of startups. And so anything that somebody can do to help move the needle is going to be a good thing. And it takes me back to not quite Philly, but Pittsburgh, so I'm close-ish. We had a client in Pittsburgh. Here we go, segue time. And, people talk about, PR isn't lead gen. It is, but sometimes it can be. So we had a client who were in Pittsburgh and they got on the register and they were phoned by another company in Pittsburgh who wanted to buy their technology, which probably, weirdly, would never have happened if they hadn't had that piece of coverage.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do have in this measurement thing that I built a way to track that because that's directly, that's PR. And there's a lot of ways that as communicators and the tools that we have that we
But
can.
that's because you've done it internally. Externally, we haven't got that insight.
True, which is, that's why I like being an in-house leader because there's so many things that you can dig into to help maximize the brand awareness and really draw a line. I worked with the head of sales, and none of us work there at Cybersecurity anymore, but she's at a different company. And I'll never forget years ago, we were at I think it was AWS reInvent for some conference, and we were getting ready for a press meeting. And I was talking to her, and she said, Carmen, the way I had adapted the AR strategy, which was a complete revamp, led to someone choosing that platform over our competitor's platform. And she's like, I hope that you know that. I'm like, no, I didn't know, but thank you. I'm going to remember that because sometimes I think the way you can shift different aspects of your communication strategy can help support leads. And I never will abandon that. I don't think that is our primary role as communicators, but I do think at the time that we live in right now, and particularly in cybersecurity, anything you can do to get from prospect to customer from the PRC is going to be valuable. And people should always keep a few tactics in mind as they're building those plans to make that a reality.
Awards is part of that, and it's what we always describe as, and I don't think we came up with this term, but as air cover for your troops on the ground.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm just sighing because someone said to me like 2 weeks ago, well, what do you mean by air cover? And I just shut down because I'm like, all right, you're not the person we shouldn't be having. Like, you don't understand, like, it's the Google impact. You know what I mean? It's when someone doesn't know who you are and you show up at their door and they say, Google, blah, 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 to their phone, where are you?
Yeah, but it's GEO now just as much as SEO. And that's where I think the PR dynamic is changing, right? Because,
the golden age.
What you put on your blog is not going to have the same impact as earned media.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side, what you're going to see is all these layoffs. I mean, goodness me, you have to have not been on LinkedIn for about 5 months to not realize that so many amazing journalists are now in the market. So they're probably going to end up doing PR, or hopefully somebody will chuck a whole load of cash at them and we'll end up with this mega brand that nobody knew about, from the ground up. But, people are going to have to start thinking, rather than chucking all this at Google Ads, maybe we need to chuck some of it as advertising for some of these publications we are always trying to get into. I'm not saying to buy coverage, but so that they're actually still there, right?
Yeah.
Value that brand. If you want to get into that brand, you're going to have to start thinking about, right, we're going to have to maybe, I'm not saying do massive campaigns, but if everybody who loves those brands puts a little bit behind them, the stack over here is one that's very new. I don't know if not everybody will be familiar with it, set up by a guy from Computer Business Review, Ed Target, and his business partner. They've got subscriptions now and they're very open about it. They are trying to build a brand and that takes money.
Yes.
at the
Yeah,
end of
I
the
subscribe to quite a few publications that I want to work with. Not obviously to get anything, but just to kind of have that access to at least get behind the paywall and see what kind of stories they're following and how they're covering them or what would be interesting to them. So I personally do quite a few subscriptions that I on.
Yeah, but I'm talking more about the vendor community actually supporting those and looking at, is this Google the right place now for us when, the number of AI searches is on the up?
Golden age of PR. Like I keep telling people, it is the golden age of communications. It is the golden age of public relations. And we are going to be the ones that influence how you show up on Google, not so much the digital ad side. But I think that, younger companies need to do a little bit of everything. And I do feel very, very strongly that putting off hiring comms support is not the thing to do. You do not wait until you think you want to launch something to hire comms support. Not in this age. Nope.
And
Not.
also what you're talking about, sort of AR as well. That's really important. So PR, AR, they're all things that if you can really make a massive difference, particularly when you're starting out, if you can get those types of things right.
That's right. That's right. Well, I think this has been a good conversation. Thank you so much for being the tester pancake. I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
I have not been a pancake before.
What'd you say?
Not been a pancake before, so it was a very enjoyable experience. Thank you.
Yes, well, it's good to be a pancake sometimes.